श्री आदिशेषाष्टकम् नित्यशय्या श्रीपतेर्यः आदिशेष इति श्रुतः फणासहस्रमूर्धा च शङ्खचक्रगदासिधृत् हस्तैश्चतुर्भिः श्रीकान्तनित्यकैङ्कर्यदीक्षितः भातु मे हृदये नित्यं नागराजो महाद्युतिः। ॐ जगज्जन्मस्थितिलयान् कुर्वन् श्रीरमया सह यस्मिन् शेते मोदमानः तस्मै शेषाय ॐ नमः। ॐ प्राणान् सप्तगतिन्यस्तो सप्त प्राकारमातनोत् श्रीशमण्टपनिर्माणे तस्मै शेषाय ॐ नमः। ॐ स्वस्वामि सेवाकरणे अपवर्णनिवारकम् ततानयो महाभाष्यम् तस्मै शेषाय ॐ नमः। ॐ स्वफणामण्डलं यो वै भोषाच्छत्रं चकारः स्वामिने स्वस्य मधुरं तस्मै शेषाय ॐ नमः। ॐ आदिकिङ्करकूटानां पराराधनरूपिणाम् आदिशेष इति ख्यातः तस्मै शेषाय ॐ नमः। ॐ श्रेषसेवाभिवृद्ध्यर्थं गात्रचित्तविशोधकम् अष्टाङ्गयोगन्तेनेयः तस्मै शेषाय ॐ नमः। स्वतो भास्वत्स्वरूपस्य शेषकैङ्कर्यरूपकम् चक्रे फणामणिज्योतिः तस्मै शेषाय ॐ नमः। ॐ मृदुलन्धवलञ्चाल्प शीतलं विस्तृतं तथा आसनं पुच्छविन्यासात् तस्मै शेषाय ॐ नमः। आदिशेषाष्टकमिदं कृष्णयोगिकृतं मुदे शायिनो आदिशेषैः भवत्विति कृताञ्जलिः। श्री आदिशेषशायिने रङ्गनाथाय नमो नमः। So last week we saw the sutra number 5, pramāna viparyaya vikalpa nidra smritayaha. This sutra is defining the 5 activities of the mind which are called together as the chitta vrittis. They are pramāna, viparyaya, vikalpa, nidra and smriti. And we saw in the previous sutra there was a connection that these 5 chitta vrittis, actually this is the 6th sutra, these 5 chitta vrittis are either cause of suffering or solution to suffering. The 5th sutra, Patanjali says vrittayaha panchatayyaha klishtaha aklishtaha. The same 5 activities are either source of suffering or they are also solution for suffering, or solution, they are not making us suffer. So this is why we last time spoke about how in the yoga school the mind is the medium for us which either liberates us or which makes us suffer. So having said that, Patanjali is now slowly defining what are the chitta vrittis. So he first defines what is called pramāna. Pramāna basically comes from the word manam. Manam means to measure. So pramanam means when we have the right measure of something, when there is correct understanding of something, when we have to perceive an object, when we have to understand a subject, etc. If we have the right understanding, we have the right measure of something, that is what is called pramanam. Comes from the root of the word ma, to measure. That's why also in the Sanskrit language and many Indian languages, the mother is called ma, because usually mother has the right measure of the child, a good mother. For example, the mother will know when the child is crying, whether this is a cry that is supposed to be the time for food, or whether this is a cry that is associated with the child is tired, or whether the child is sleepy. The mother usually understands the child correctly, usually. So that's why even the mother is called ma, because that is the person who measures, understands well. This is the beauty of the Sanskrit language. Pramanam therefore is the state where the measurement of a situation, is correct, where in our chitta vritti, in our mind, we have an understanding of an object or of a circumstance or of an experience in a correct manner. Now there are many ways to establish this pramana. In every shastra of the Vedic tradition, one of the first things that the shastras do is how to establish fact, how to establish pramanam, because each shastra they are saying we understand a reality a certain way. Now what is the proof that this is the reality, that you have understood it correctly? So each shastra presents their way of pramana. Now both yoga and Sankhya school, they have 3 ways of establishing pramana. Pratyaksha Anumana Agamaha Pramanani. This is the 7th sutra. Pratyaksha Anumana Agamaha Pramanani. So Patanjali says there are three ways of establishing pramāna, three ways through which we can have the right understanding of something. Pratyaksha is one way, Anumana is one way, Agama is another way. Now Pratyaksha, the word comes from Prati Aksha. Aksha literally means the eyes. But Aksha in this context is not just the eyes, it represents the senses. And Prati means in front of. For example, I am seeing all of you. Why? Because you are in front of my eyes. So I can see you. You are seeing me because I am in front of your eyes and you are able to see. This is what is Pratyaksham. But it's not only vision. We also have a right understanding of something based on other senses. For example, when we smell a fruit or a vegetable, we have the smell in front of our nose. So in front of the smelling capacity, when there is something, there is a perception. We don't need to see it. We can close our eyes, but we can smell something. We know this is an apple, this is an orange, this is a garlic, this is an onion, because we have smell of these things. The smell, the sense of smell is able to identify. Similarly, sound in front of the ears, etc. So Pratyaksha means Pratyaksha. That means there is a possible for perception when we are seeing an object or a situation that is right in front of our field of senses. So this is what is called sensory perception, Pratyaksham. So sensory perception can establish a truth for us. This is what we are doing. In modern days, we can use this very often. We are using it in our day-to-day activities. But this is not the only way. We are also using another way that is called Anumana. Anumana means measurement based on following something. Anu means to follow. We follow something and we measure that situation. For example, there is a smoke. We see the smoke and we follow that smoke. We see, oh, there is a smoke, therefore there should be fire. So we see a small part of a reality and project it to a larger part of a reality. When we are cooking, when in the old days we want to make sure that the rice is well cooked, we take one rice and we are squeezing it between our two fingers to see if it is well cooked. And when we have taken one or two pieces of rice and it's well cooked, we make the conclusion that the whole vessel is well cooked. We don't take every rice and squeeze it. Similarly, when we go to a doctor who is wanting to do some blood test for us, they are taking a little drops of blood from our body. They take few milliliters and they make the test on that and they make a conclusion about the whole body. They take few drops of blood and say, oh, these drops of blood have so much sugar, therefore the body must have so much sugar. This is what is Anumanam. Take a part of a reality and expand it to the entire reality. So this is also a way of perception that is established. So basically, these two methods are very well understandable by all of us, which is why modern science is there. Modern science is based on Pratyaksha and Anumana as well. That's why science is usually establishing facts based on measurable realities. And Pratyaksha and Anumana are based on measurable realities. But yoga is saying there is not only Pratyaksha and Anumana that is possible, both yoga and Sankhya are saying this, that there is also another way, that is what is called Anumana, Anumana Prajna or Anumana Agama Pramāna. Sorry, not Anumana, Agama. Agama Pramāna. Pratyaksha, Anumana, Agama. So there is a third way of perception which is called Agama. Some things we cannot perceive through senses. Some things we cannot also infer from cause and effect or measuring a small and projecting to the other. There are certain realities that we have to take a reference of what is called an apta vakya pramāna. This is also agama pramāna, is also called apta vakya pramāna, which means reference from a reliable source. Reference from a reliable source. So we usually call agama pramāna as pramāna through a reference. Anumana is pramāna through inference. Pratyaksha is pramāna through perception, through observation. But agama is pramāna through a reference. So sometimes we cannot see certain things, we cannot see some things. We have to take the testimony of a person who we rely. This can be in a simple way, this can be in a very profound way. For example, if we are not people who travel so much and somebody comes from another country and they say, oh, this is like this in my country. Now we are not going to be able to see that. Maybe we don't have a way to infer that. We have to take the testimony of that person, and because they are a reliable person and we say, okay, this reliable person is saying this, this must be correct. We take the reference of this person. So that is what is called as an agama pramāna. Now this is established not only because we are able to see things, that is, our field of perception is limited to objects that we can see. But in the yoga and Sankhya philosophy, there are objects that we cannot see. Patanjali is presenting this because in the yoga field and in the Sankhya field, they are asking us to observe and relate with objects that we cannot see through the usual senses. Classic example is Purusha, Drashta. Now Drashta or Purusha, the consciousness, is not perceivable by the senses. It's beyond the senses. It's what is said in the one of the Yoga Rahasya, chapter 3, I think 3 or 4. Atma Tattvam Svaprakashatvam Atindriyam Anamayam. The reality of the self, the Purusha, is self-revealing. You cannot perceive it. It will show itself. But it is Atindriya. It is beyond the Indriyas. Senses cannot grasp it. Our senses have a field of perception. Simple example, what our dogs can hear, we cannot hear. So that means there is some sound that we cannot hear that the dogs are able to hear. So just because we cannot perceive it, it doesn't mean that it does not exist. Similarly, Drashta or Purusha is something that is beyond the senses. It doesn't mean it does not exist. That's what Patanjali will argue in the later chapter of the Upanishad, where he will say that just because something is not visible to you either through direct perception or through indirect perception, anumana, it does not mean it does not exist. This is a very beautiful question he asks. Tad apramanakam tada kim syat. Just because you don't see something, does it mean it doesn't exist? There are so many people in this world, we don't see them. We don't meet them. Does it mean they don't exist? This is the question he is asking. So certain realities such as Purusha are very important for philosophies like Sankhya and Yoga. Sankhya says you have to realize the Purusha. There has to, the realization of the difference between what is Purusha, what is Prakriti has to be understood. Then Yoga school also says Kaivalyam is when you remove the avidya, that Prakriti is Purusha. You have to understand what is Purusha, what is Prakriti. Sattva, Purusha, Anyata Khyati, that they are different. You have to have that that realization. If you have to realize that two things are different, you have to know what those two things are. That means you have to know what is Purusha. But Purusha is not perceivable by senses nor by inference. That is why he says there is Agama Pramāna. There is Agama also. In the Sankhya school, they call it Apta Vakya Pramanam, or they also call it Shabda Pramāna. Pramāna through Shabda. Now, this is very significant because Shabda also means chanting. Shabda also means chanting. Certain realities are understood through the power of chanting. That's why Vyasa, in the commentary of the Yogasutra in the 2nd chapter, he says, Swadhyaya, the process of knowing yourself, comes through chanting. Svashaka Adhyayanam Pranavadi Mantra Japam. Either you have to chant certain Vedic chants, or you have to use some mantra japa. When you do the chanting, the vibrations in the body changes, the mind becomes quiet, the senses become quiet. It takes you to a place where you go deep inside yourself, and there is a realization that happens of what is within us, what is in the heart. That's why Shabda Pramāna is Adhyayanam, Mantra Japam, etc., where we realize ourselves through the process of chanting or mantras. That's why one of the first tools that Patanjali presents in the yoga school is Mantra Japa. Tad Japaha Tad Artha Bhavanam. And he says, as a consequence of that, Tataha Pratyak Chetana Adhigamaha, you will realize yourself. That's why Agama Pramāna or Shabda Pramāna can also be called as perception through realization. And this is also something that we all experience in our life. We make mistakes. Somebody can show us what is the mistake we made, but we don't realize it. We ourselves see that it's a mistake, but we still don't realize it. We make it again and again. But at some point in our life, we realize it from within. We realize it from within. Then we understand, oh, there is something. That is Agama Pramāna, Shabda Pramāna. The voice within us tells us, hey, this is wrong. Only when we hear that voice that is within us, that is, there is that solid realization. No matter what the inference is showing, no matter what perception is showing, we don't realize it. Classic example, there are many people who smoke cigarettes, and very often in the cigarette box there is signs which says smoking kills, smoking is dangerous. But people don't realize that. They read it, it registers, but they don't realize it because they are continuing to do that. Some years later, they go to doctors. Doctor does blood test, doctor does various tests, Anumana Pramāna. It also shows that there is great sickness, that the person has lung problem, heart problems, etc. But still they don't realize. But somehow, maybe some realization happens where a voice within them speaks to them, and that day they can quit. That is the inner voice. That is also what is called Agama Pramāna or Shabda Pramāna. The voice need not always come from outside. The voice can also come from inside. That is why it's called Agama Pramāna. And Vedic chanting or Mantra Japa is one way of going close to the inner voice so that we can hear it, we can listen to it, and we realize it. And that is why Sankhya school and Yoga school accept this very strongly, that there is a third way of pramana, that is agama pramana. The Visishtadvaita Vedanta also accepts the agama pramana. In fact, one of the founder of the school Visishtadvaita, the pioneers, called Ramanujacharya, he was a great proponent of this. He even wrote a text called Agama Pramanya, Agama Pramanyam. That means pramana through agama. That's why in the Vedic culture, Vedas are called agamas. Because of what I just said to you, when you do the Vedic chanting, it takes you to the inner voice, and hopefully you hear that. Hopefully you hear that. That for that you have to chant, you have to practice, and you have to chant not from your lips, but a little bit more deeper than the lips. Many of us, when we chant from the mouth, we become what is called parrots. There is a discussion about this in the Vedic schools as well. They say chanting like a parrot is not useful, because the parrot only repeats it from the mouth. It doesn't understand what you are saying. There is a talking parrot. It doesn't understand so much. Whereas we have to understand from a deep place. So it's not just repeating, but what is also important is that we feel the chant and chant it. Then only it works. And that is what is called agama pramana. Agama pramana is a very strong pramana in the Vedic tradition and very important in the yoga field. If you remove agama pramana, you are no more in yoga, you are in the school of materialism, or what is called Charuvaka school, etc., where they say only what is measurable is real, what is not measurable is not real. There's a lot of modern day yoga teachers and people who are involved in yoga and medicine, etc. They are trying to establish standards and other things with regard to yoga as a therapeutic modality and things like that. And they want to define yoga in terms of measurable parameters like which modern science can understand. And that is actually going against the philosophy of yoga, because Patanjali has clearly presented that there is a way of understanding things that is beyond measurable parameters, and if that is removed, you are no more in the school of yoga. You cannot understand realities such as Purusha, Ishvara, such things such as Maitri, Karuna, etc., which are essential parts of yoga, through measurable realities. How can you measure somebody's compassion? How can you measure somebody's feeling of friendliness? How can you measure somebody's feeling of appreciation? It's not measurable. But these are realities that are presented in the school of yoga. Patanjali presents at various stages in the yoga philosophy. So, if we are in the school of yoga, we have to accept all three ways of pramana. Patanjali is not saying you should reject pratyaksha and anumana and only accept agama. Patanjali is not saying don't do that. Patanjali is saying keep your doors open for pratyaksha, for anumana and for agama, because all three are valid ways of establishing reality. So if we want to be in the yoga school, we have to accept all the three ways, because in certain cases pratyaksha will help us, in certain cases anumana will help us, in certain cases agama is the only way that is there. Agama is the only way that is there. For example, Shraddha is a very fundamental concept of yoga teaching. There is no instrument to measure how much faith one has, how much Shraddha somebody has. There is no way of pratyaksha or anumana to measure Shraddha. But that is a fundamental fact. For yoga to work, you have to have Shraddha. So that's why Patanjali is giving us the third option, that is agama pramana. So that's how he defines what is called pramana. Pratyaksha, anumana, agamaha, pramanani. So this is the sutra that defines what is called pramana. Now the same pratyaksha, anumana, agama can establish the opposite, which is called viparyaya. Suppose pratyaksha is wrong, your sense of perception is wrong, your senses are failing, you cannot hear well, your eyes are failing, or it is biased because of certain predisposition. So what you see is not the whole picture, you only see a part. So pratyaksha can lead to viparyaya when the observation is wrong. Anumana can lead you to viparyaya. Anumana can lead you to viparyaya. You can make mistakes in inference. Agama can lead you to viparyaya, wrong understanding, because you can have the wrong reference. You can have the wrong reference. Sometimes you think it's your inner voice, but it is basically your imagination. There are a lot of people who think they have intuition, but basically it's imagination. So sometimes that can also go wrong. A wrong inference. I cannot ask my doctor advice about my problems with my electrical connections in the house. I cannot ask my doctor advice about stock market because he is not the reference for that. But if I say, oh doctor, you can take care of my health, so you also take care of my financial health, it's not going to work. We need another kind of reference for that. So if we ask the wrong reference, this is also a problem. A lot of people, tourists who come from outside to India, they have this problem. They ask the auto rickshaw drivers, what is a good restaurant? Now the auto rickshaw drivers may not know what is a good restaurant, because they will go to the restaurant where they get 50 rupees extra when they bring tourists. So that is not a right reference, that is not the right agama. So all the three can also lead to viparyaya. That's why viparyaya is defined as viparyayaha mithya jnanam. Mithya jnanam means false knowledge. Sometimes we act with false knowledge gets established in our mind, not the reality, false knowledge. Like I gave you the example last week, we misunderstand a rope to be a snake or a snake to be a rope, because our perception is failing. Somehow in the dark we don't see the difference, or we are in a rush, so we don't see the difference. We think that this is only a rope, but actually it may be a snake. So that is what is mithya jnanam. There is a false knowledge. And what is false knowledge? Atadrupa pratishtham. False knowledge is that knowledge where a form that is different from the actual form is established. Tadrupam means a form as it is. Atadrupam means a form that is different from the real form. Snake is a snake. But in our mind, there is another reality that is established, that is, it's a rope. So that is what is viparyaya. Now the problem with viparyaya is, when you look at this definition that Patanjali is giving, the problem with viparyaya is that we don't know it's viparyaya, because what is established in our mind is the wrong knowledge. If we know it's wrong, it's no more viparyaya. We have pramāna. Suppose I know my understanding is wrong, it is clarity. That's why atadrupa pratishtham, the wrong knowledge is firmly established. Wrong knowledge is firmly established. And we make decisions based on that wrong knowledge. We continue to act. That is why we are led into dukkham. If we have wrong knowledge and don't do anything about it, there is no problem. But we are acting on that wrong knowledge. Classic example, many years ago, I think it was in the year 1997 or 97, when I was first traveling to Europe. I went first traveling to Germany. I arrived in the airport in Frankfurt, and then one of my father's friends picked me up, and we went to to a restaurant to have a coffee and breakfast because it was very early in the morning. So as I came to the restaurant, there was I said to my friend, I have to use the bathroom, and he said, oh, it's there, you can go there. So I went to follow this, and there were two signs on the two doors of the bathroom. One sign had 4 letters HERR, hair, and on the other sign it says DAMEN, damen. So you see, this is what is viparya based on pratyaksha. When I read these signs, in the sign HERR, I saw HER, hair. And in the sign DAMEN, damen, I saw MEN, men. So this is viparya, because in German Herr means man, damen means woman, women, the exact opposite. But in the mind, because of wrong pratyaksha, the opposite gets established. This is what is atadrupam. The wrong thing gets established. Now, there will not be any problem if I just read that and left it. I am acting on that. I enter that toilet which is the wrong toilet, and then I get shocked because it's the wrong place. So all the people inside, they are a bit agitated and they chase me out. So this is what is the cause of suffering. A simple example, because viparya is not just a thing that we just hold. It's so strongly established, it establishes itself as if it was pramāna, and therefore we are acting, because at that moment we don't know. But the moment I come out of this situation, I seek clarification with my friend, and he is laughing, and then he clarifies, the next time it is pramāna, because the tadrupa is established, and I have a reference. There's a German man, he tells me, explains to me, so he is my reference. Because if I had asked another Indian man who has the same kind of vision, it would be again a wrong reference. So I have to have the right reference. He clarifies, the viparya becomes pramāna, and therefore the right action is then established. So that is the problem with viparya. When the wrong perception is established, we are acting on that. And when we are acting on that, it leads to dukkham. That is why Patanjali says, be careful with viparya, because it acts, it gives you the perception as if it is real. Just another example, for so many years, people thought that the world was flat, and they were acting as if the world was flat. They did not think, they did not know that the world was round, but they acted as if it was flat. This is what viparya does for long time, until the viparya becomes pramāna. Viparya establishes itself in a form as if it is a knowledge. That is why Patanjali says mithya jnanam. It's knowledge, but it's false. But it establishes itself as knowledge in you. This is what is mithya jnanam, atadrupa pratishtam. And that is why pramāna and viparya are often close, because it is the same means that establish pramāna that can also lead us to have viparya, because viparya can come from pratyaksha, viparya can come from anumana, viparya can come from agama. All the 3 ways can establish this. And it's also very important to know that whether it is pramāna or viparya, both can be klishta or aklishta. And in different circumstances, sometimes pramāna is klishta, sometimes pramāna is aklishta. Sometimes viparya is klishta, sometimes viparya is aklishta. So we also have to understand this. But in general, in the Sankhya and Yoga philosophy, they also present one very important principle. For the Sankhya school and the Yoga school, the highest viparya is the confusion between the establishing of the Prakriti as if it is Purusha. When we think that mind is the master, mind is the Purusha, that is Viparyaya, because mind, its form, its actual form is not the master. Its form is, it is a something that serves the master, that serves the Drashta. Patanjali will define this in the second chapter. Tadartha eva drishyasya atma. Drishyam, which includes mind, senses and the bhutas, is there to serve the Purusha. Purusha is the leader. But the leader is taken over by the mind and the senses, as if the mind and the senses are the leaders, and that gets established as the reality. That is Viparyaya. That's why my grandfather would always say, in modern times we are always in the Viparyaya, because in the modern times we are so much giving importance to Prakriti. He would say that in this world we are giving importance to matter. That's why we are in a materialistic world, because we are giving importance to matter. Whereas in the schools of Vedic culture, that is Sankhya, Yoga, Vedanta, etc., they are saying matter is not the master. The master is Drashta. And until you realize that the master is Drashta and the follower, the subservient to Drashta is Prakriti, you will always be in Dukkham, because that gets established as the reality which is wrong, and we are acting on that reality. We are acting on that reality. In the second chapter, when the sutras on Yama and Niyama come, these arguments are coming. Because when we talk about Shaucha, many of us, we are talking about taking care of cleanliness of the body, of the mind, etc. But the yogic schools and the Sankhya schools are saying, well, it's not just the body and mind you have to worry about, you also have to worry about the spirit. Because the spirit has to free itself from the cycle of its karma and get associated with something that is higher. That is what is Kaivalyam. So if we are always focused on matter, cleaning the physical body all the time, we ignore actually what needs to be refined. And therefore we will continue to live with Viparyaya and continue to live with Dukkham. And that's why this way of Agama Pramāna is very important, because realization of certain subtle concepts, what is called Sukshma Vishaya, such as Purusha, such as Ishvara, etc., is beyond body and senses. And that is why Agama, the reference, is the most important attribute. And in the schools of yoga and Sankhya philosophy, in the schools of Vedanta as well, they are often telling us you don't really need an external reference. You need to listen to that internal reference that is inside your heart. And this is why certain tools of yoga are called as Antaranga sadhanas, because they take us into the heart. And when we are practicing such tools that help us to go into our heart and listen to the inner voice, then we are practicing what my father would call as the heart of yoga.